And in many sikhs, the Rebbe explains that the arriving in America wasn't only the fact that physically the Rebbe's life was saved from the Nazis, but it was also a spiritual transition. And the Rebbe, as soon as the Rebbe came here, the Frierdiker Rebbe gave over to the Rebbe the leadership of three main organizations that existed then, which included all the other, everything else are branches of these three. And that was the day of Sivan. So it's based on, it usually comes around Parsha Shlach, which is coming up soon, and it's based on the Haftorah. Shlach is the story of the spies. Moshe Rabbeinu sent spies, and unfortunately they came back with a very negative report, and because of that, all the Yidden were discouraged, and as a result of that, they lost their faith in Hashem that they're going to be able to conquer Eretz Yisrael, and that's when the decree came that because of what they did, and because of their lack of faith, they're going to be in the desert for the next 40 years. So the Haftorah is always similar to the Parsha. So the Haftorah talks about the story how Yoshua, when he had to conquer Eretz Yisrael, also sent spies. So this is the beginning of the Haftorah, the sheet that I gave out over here, where it says, Vayishlach Yehoshua ben Nun min Ashitim, Yehoshua ben Nun sent, thank you, sent two people to spy and said, L'chu re'uas aretz, go and see the land, and Yericho, which means they weren't instructed to spy on the entire land of Eretz Yisrael, just the city of Yericho. And the reason for that is because, Chazal say that the Yericho is considered like the key or the lock that unlocks the whole land. If you conquer Yericho, you can conquer the whole land. And then he went to the woman's house, and then the Torah tells the story how they were almost found and how their lives were saved and so on. So that's the way the Mamar begins. Let's start. Vayishlach Yehoshua shnayim anoshim meraglim. Yehoshua sent two people, spies. The vibe of the Kuti Torah. So the Alter Rebbe explains in the Kuti Torah, the Mamar begins with the same words, Vayishlach Yehoshua shnayim anoshim. Achilik b'meraglim shesholach Yehoshua v'meraglim shesholach Moshe. What is the difference between the spies that Yehoshua sent and the spies that Moshe Rabbeinu sent? What is the difference? And the Alter Rebbe explains the Meraglim Shesholach Moshe, when Moshe Rabbeinu sent the spies, it says in the pasuk, Shlach b'cha, sent to you. And Rashi asks, why does it say sent to you? It should say send spies. What does it mean to you? And Rashi answers, L'daitcha, send the spies according to your understanding. Because Ani Eini Mitzavulach. Hashem said, I'm not commanding you to do it. You want to do it? You can do it. But you're doing it because you understand to send. I'm not telling you to do it. But the sending of the spies that Yehoshua sent, that was not on his own accord. That was based on Hashem's commandment. So that's difference number one. That Moshe Rabbeinu, Hashem told him, I'm not telling you to send. If you want to send, it's you make the decision. And Yehoshua, Hashem did tell him to send. Another difference is when Yehoshua sent Meraglim, spies, he sent them only to the city of Yericho, which is Man'ula Shel Eretz Yisrael. Like I said before, that the reason why they sent, because that's considered the lock of the whole land. It's like if you have a house and you want to get into the house, even if the house has 10 floors and it has who knows how many rooms, but the way to get in is by the door that's locked. Once you get through the door that's locked, you have access to the whole house. So Yericha, the city of Yericha, is considered the lock to the entire land. By days at Torah Oretz, and through this was the way they sort of spied on the whole land just by spying on one city. But in the case of Moshe Rabbeinu, he sent the Meraglim, and the Meraglim went through the entire land, the length of the land, the width of the land. And in fact, that's why it took them 40 days, because they had to go through the whole entire land. This is the two differences. The Kudas Habibas and the explanation why was it different? Shatzi with the Kibbashad Baruchni, so B'chol HaTzivuyin Shabbatera in Yinitzchi B'chol Der V'der. This commandment to send spies technically happened once, a few thousand years ago, when Moshe Rabbeinu sent to send spies. And then 40 years later, Yeshua, it said, send spies. However, being that the Torah is eternal and everything that's written in Torah is applicable for all of eternity, so that means that spiritually, the avodah of sending a spy applies to all of us at all times. The kol echad v'echad miYisrael, every single yid, tzarich lichbosh kol hakochos v'inyanim degufa v'nafsha b'hamas. Every yid has, just like they were going there to conquer Eretz Yisrael from the land of Canaan, from the 7 nations, we also have to conquer. What do we have to conquer? Our faculties and everything that there is in the body, everything that the Nefesh Bahamas possesses. But I say some, and we have to transform it and make it into Kelim Elokus, to be vessels for godliness. Thank you, Eretz Yisrael. But basically, this reminds us of Tanya. If you remember in chapter 9, the Alter Rebbe says that the Nefesh Elokis and Nefesh Bahamas are like two kings, and they're fighting over a little city. Each one wants to conquer the city. What is the city? The city is the guf. And who are the inhabitants of the city? Who lives in the city? That these are the organs of the body, the faculties of a person, the intellect, the emotion, the hands, the feet, the eyes, the nose, the mouth. The Nefesh Elokis wants to conquer them, that they should function according to the Nefesh Elokis' will. And the Nefesh Bahamas wants to conquer them, that they should function according to his will. So really, what we are doing on a personal level is the same thing they did then. It's about conquering the land of Eretz Yisrael. That's on a physical level, and this is conquering and turning our guf and Nefesh Bahamas into Eretz Yisrael, also in a spiritual sense. Amen. This reminds us of the famous story with the Tzemach Tzedek, that there was a chassid who, when he was older, he had a desire to move and relocate to Eretz Yisrael, and he has a Tzemach Tzedek for a bracha, and also for his consent, if he thinks it's a good idea. Tzemach Tzedek didn't think it's a good idea, and he said to him, why travel to Eretz Yisrael? He said in Yiddish, Magda Eretz Yisrael. This is one of the, you can call it the word, favorite stories that I've repeated it numerous times, and it spoke about what we can learn it from this story. But the simple meaning is, instead of you going to Eretz Yisrael and enjoying Eretz Yisrael, transform the location where you are now into Eretz Yisrael. And that's what we need to do with our own guf. So now, based on that, we can understand the difference between Yeshua and Moshe Rabbeinu. What's the difference between Yericha and Eretz Yisrael? That Moshe Rabbeinu sent spies, that they should spy on the entire country, and Yehoshua sent spies only to spy on the city called Yericha. Yericha hu gimel levushim machshava dibra ma'isa. Yericha alludes to the 3 garments: thought, speech, and action. Why is that? Ki Yericha malashon reach. The word Yericha is the same root word as reach, which means scent. and smell. Ulevushim shayachim l'reya. Garments are connected to the scent. Ukumarumis lashon hazeya, as it's also hinted in the Zohar, where it says bereicha delushaychu, the scent of your garments. If you look at footnote 15, there's a story there which comes from the Zohar. And the story is the Zohar that there was Rabbi Yitzchak and Rabbi Yehuda. They were staying at the home of Rabbi Hamnuna, the elder. He was one of the greatest tzaddikim of the time. And she had a child who was called Yenuka. His name is mentioned in the Zohar more than once. Yenuka means a young child, but he was on the level like one of the sages of the Tanaim and Amoraim. So she said to her child, go to these great men and get a blessing from them. He started walking towards them, and then he stopped, and he went back, as if something's wrong. So she asked him, why did you stop? Why didn't you continue to go to them? So he says, how can I go to them? These are people who didn't say the Shema today. In other words, they didn't observe a mitzvah. And these are the great tzaddikim. He asked him, how do you know? So he said he was able to tell by the scent that they didn't say the Shema. And they answered, it's true, they didn't say the Shema today. The reason was, there's a principle in halacha, ha'osek b'mitzvah, patur min ha'mitzvah. If someone is busy and occupied with doing a mitzvah, and it's a kind of mitzvah you can't do two things at the same time, you're exempt from doing another mitzvah. They were at that time helping a chassan and a kala. That was the mitzvah they were busy with. And because of that, they didn't have the time to read the Shema. So they're exempt from the Shema. But we see from here that there was a mitzvah lacking, and how did they recognize it? From the scent. We see that garments, the word he used was from the scent of your garments. So you might remember from Tanya, where it says the difference between Torah and mitzvahs is, Torah is like foods, and mitzvahs are like garments. And the reason is because Torah is something which is intellect. Intellect is like food, which the difference between food and garments both have an effect on a person. Food has an effect on a person, and garments have an effect on a person. Garments enhance a person's appearance, but garments are something which are external. And food is something which goes into the body and becomes part of my flesh and blood. Spiritually, when you learn Torah, the knowledge goes into my brain, and that's what I understand. That gives me my perspective. That gives me my values. Everything comes from my understanding. So Torah is something which really penetrates and becomes part of me. Pneumius, as compared to food. Mitzvahs are compared to garments, because even though they also have an impact on the person spiritually, but it's not like Torah because it's not something which I internalize. It's an act. I eat matzah, I hear shofar, I put on tefillin. So it's not an intellectual experience. Even though you might say, don't you think about the meaning of it? The meaning of it is very important, but that's not the mitzvah. The mitzvah is the physical act of putting on tefillin, the physical act of washing my hands, physical act of putting up a mezuzah, the physical act of eating matzah, hearing shofar, shaking the lulav and esrog. And the physical act is not something which is intellectual. And that's also the association with the scent and the food, the same thing. Food has a scent. Apple has a scent, and the food, you can tell from the scent which food is in the room. However, the difference is the same thing again. The food is something which I internalize. I eat it, it becomes part of me. The scent is something which we smell, but it's still external. Yeah.
So in the last time I was learning the Nora, that the action is the higher.
Right.
So are you putting perspective, or is it even that?
When you finish this mimer, you'll understand how action is even higher, more than you understood it before. Yep. So then, Yericha alludes to the three garments. So what does Eretz Yisrael represent? The whole land. Being that Eretz Yisrael is the land of the 7 nations, and the 7 nations that represents, and that's the idea of the 7 emotional attributes. So therefore it means that Yericha is about conquering the garments, that my thought, speech, and action should be the way it's supposed to be. And conquering the whole land is about transforming my character traits, that my midos, my emotions, my character traits should be transformed. Once we understand this, we can understand the difference. Zeh ma shatzivu Yeshua. And this explains why Yeshua sent the spies to conquer only Yericha, the city of Yericha. Why? Kimachshava, dibur, umaisa, thought, speech, and action, which are the spiritual garments. This is one of the first things we learn in Tanya, chapter 4. These are things that are within our grasp and our control. We're capable of changing our thoughts, speech, and our action, which means regardless of who I am, what I am, how strong I am, how weak I am, spiritually, am I understanding, am I feeling, nevertheless, the ability to do what needs to be done and to speak what needs to be spoken and to think what needs to be thought, everybody's capable of doing that. If I'm not up to the point where I feel this love for Hashem, doesn't change the fact I still can do those things that Hashem told me to do. And I can still daven, say brachas, whether I feel or don't feel. And the same with thought. I can occupy my thoughts with whatever I'm told that this is what I'm supposed to be thinking when I do this mitzvah, that mitzvah, even if I'm not at a level where these thoughts are like bursting out of my emotions. The thought, speech, and action is within reach of every single person to control. So every person has a command. Just like Yeshua, what's the command? Lasser, to spy. Spy means to examine. The livchen, to examine his thought, speech, and action, that it should be kulam lavai, it should be directed towards Hashem. Next page. Hashem can amida shabalev. But when it comes to midos, which is the emotional attributes, einam b'shusar shel kol adam, that's not within the reach of every person. The tzaddikim dafka libam b'shusam. Only tzaddikim have the power to transform their hearts, their feelings, the way they feel about things internally. But everyone else, what's expected of us is mainly machshava, dibur, and maisa. We can't expect of ourselves to change deeply and internally, but we could expect of ourselves to be in control of what we say, what we do, and what we think. Therefore, the Meraglim, despite that Moshe Rabbeinu sent, he sent them to look over the whole land, which means spiritually we're talking about transforming the 7 midos, conquering the 7 nations, which means conquering and transforming the 7 emotional attributes. Somebody, that was a mezuzah they just felt. I asked someone like, whatever. If you can, it's probably on the floor. It's the back room. And bring it to me if you don't mind. Not too heavy. Thank you. So Moshe Rabbeinu said, let's go conquer the land, the entire land. Spiritually, it means now we're going to conquer the 7 midos, change my chesed, my gvura, my teferet, the way I feel about things. So here Hashem said to him, Shlach l'chol adaitcha. This is something which you can do it on your own, but I'm not making it as a command. I'm not commanding. Why? He avoided the kibush of midas. This avodah of conquering the actual midas, the way it's supposed to be done properly, Udafka de Gilip and his Moshe, Bein Shabbat the Chol Nefesh. Moshe Rabbeinu was a tzaddik, he was able to do it. He could inspire other people to do it. But Hashem is not giving it as a command, because when Hashem gives a command, it's for everybody. And this is not something which everybody has the capacity to do. We can't naturally change our midas completely. Let's go into this a little bit more. Torah is eternal. So it's understood. The Zeshem is super b'Torah. Gam shluch hameraglim the Moshe. The fact that the Torah tells us the story how Moshe sent meraglim. Yes, the Torah says that it's not a command. Hashem is telling us it's not commanded, but Moshe on his own is telling them to send meraglim. But nevertheless, being that it's in the Torah is for every yid, so it's Hayra needs this. It's an eternal Hayra. And that eternal is something which is relevant to Cholech of Rachman Yisrael. How could that be if we just finished saying that it's only for tzaddikim? So all this is being based on what it says in Tanya, being tzaddikim or beinim. Shabbos habeini. I just want to give a little introduction here before we do it inside. I mean, everyone knows that Tanya is called the Sefer Shel Beinim, the book of the Beinim. And the Alter Rebbe says everybody's capable of being a Beinoni. How many people do we know that are Beinoni? But everybody's capable. What's the big deal? So of course you'll say we're weaker, we're not like they used to be. I'm not so sure how many people years ago were Beinoni. Even in the times of Alter Rebbe, they were great chassidim, but Beinoni is really what everybody else in the world would describe a Beinoni would be like a big tzaddik. Imagine that there's not one nuance, not an action, not a word, not a thought that goes against Torah that comes to a person. So how do we say that Tanya is really relevant to every single person? And the answer is, even if every single person can't become a Beinoni, but the Sefer and everything that talks about how a Beinoni is supposed to serve Hashem, the mode of service of Hashem, this applies to every single person. The tzaddik's way of serving Hashem is not for us. It's a different approach completely. The Beinoni's way, the way he deals with his issues, we deal the same way with our issues. But of course, the Beinoni is the one that succeeds all the way, and we don't have that level of success. But the way we deal with our Nefesh Bahamas and our Yetzer Hara and everything else is identical to the Beinoni, as we'll soon see. Yeah.
You just say everyone is or is not capable?
Everyone is capable to be a Beinoni, but even though practically say how many people became Beinonim, but the mode of Avodah, the way the Alter Rebbe describes how a Beinoni serves Hashem, that is the path that applies to every single person. We'll soon explain. And what he's going to explain now is the difference between tzaddikim and beinim is not just this person accomplished one thing, this another thing. From the start, a tzaddik has a different kind of a neshama, and the beini has a different kind of neshama. The neshama that the beinoni has, which is everybody else except for tzaddikim, don't even have the capacity to become a tzaddik. It's like I say, a human being can't fly, and birds can fly. We don't have the capacity to fly. We don't have that ability. A bird, Hashem created that they can fly. Hashem created certain neshama that they could reach the level of tzaddikim. We don't have that chemistry in us. Yep.
When you were born with the potential, is that still a thing now?
If it applies now,
yeah.
That there are people that are born potential to be tzaddik, yeah. Again, even tzaddikim, it doesn't mean that they were born and from the first day they're born, they're on the level of a tzaddik. They work on it, but they have the capacity that they work on themselves, they can reach the level of a tzaddik. The average person could reach maximum, the highest they can reach is to be a beinoni. And you shouldn't worry about it because there are many levels of beinonis. Even after you become a beinoni, there'll still be plenty of room to work. Tzemach Tzedek once said, I guess it was to his chassidim, the same words that Rabbi said, Kegoyin ana beinoni, I'm an example of a beinoni. So one of the chassidim said to the Rebbe the same words that they said to Rabbi. If that's the case, you're making all of us Rishayim if you're a beinoni. So he said there are multiple levels, infinite levels in beinoni. And even from Tanya we learned that there are many levels of beinoni. So not to worry about it. If you become a Beinoni, you'll still have work to do. The humans are behegdim. Let's understand Hamavur b'Tanya, what it says in Tanya. Binyan tzadikim u'beinim, ba'ad avodah v'tzadik and a Beinoni. Shabeidis ha-Beinoni he be'ike b'levusha ha-nefesh. The Beinoni, his main avodah is to be in control of his garments, thought, speech, and action. And that's why midas ha-Beinoni he midas kolodam. That's why the Alter Rebbe says that the level of Beinoni applies to every single person, because this is where every one of us is holding. And we're all capable, and we all have the capacity to be in control of our thoughts, our speech, and our action. And what does that mean? Shegam kishalev chemed. Even if the heart has a passion, Masaba is a taiva and has a desire for something, whatever that pleasure is, whether it's something which is kosher or not kosher. The desire in the heart could be there, but b'yicholtoi, a Beinoni is a person that has the ability, this apek, to hold back, but limshel, to be totally in control. The ruach tavas and shebeliba, he could contain himself, and he could hold back the taiva. Shalei he should not fulfill what he wants to do. He shouldn't bring it into actual thought and speech and action. First of all, it means not to think about it willingly. So we know this is what it says in Tanya. How could you say that a Beinoni is on that level? There's certain things that come to a person's mind, certain thoughts that are not appropriate thoughts, and a Beinoni is not in control of that. So that's why he says these words, not to think willingly. In other words, the fact that a certain thought comes to my mind, even a Beinoni that's described in Tanya, which is, like I said, everyone would agree that this is like a tzaddik. A person never violated the Torah, not in thought, not in speech, not in action, and not one iota, not in the past, and he'll never do it in the future. Nevertheless, even this person, a thought could occur to him. But the moment the thought comes to his mind, he's able to immediately dismiss it. And really, all of us can do that. Just that the Beinoni actually does it. But we all have that ability and that capacity, that something that comes to the mind, not to continue thinking about it willingly. That's that's the power that we have. And I just want to show you, this is from Tanya, in this copies here. I don't know why there's so many. Let me see. Yeah, it's double sided. Okay, you don't mind. Give this out. Here the Alter Rebbe is talking to the Beinoni. This is chapter 27 in Tanya. And the Alter Rebbe is talking about, there's 3 chapters. The Alter Rebbe talks about depression. But one of the things that could make a person feel depressed. So one of the things that could make a Beinoni feel depressed is that he has thoughts that he feels are inappropriate. He shouldn't be having such thoughts. So the Alter Rebbe says like this. Let's look at page 364. The paragraph that begins, you see it in English, on 364, it says, not only should the occurrence of these thoughts not grieve him, but it ought to bring him joy, for only thereby is he able to fulfill this commandment. What is he talking about? On the contrary, such sadness is due to conceit. In other words, if a person is sad that he has a thought that's a disturbing thought, that means Einay Marcus Mekayim, he doesn't recognize this place. He's exaggerating who he really is. He thinks that he's greater than what he is. He's upset. Why am I not like a tzaddik? And he thinks to himself, tzaddikim certainly don't have such foolish thoughts like I have. So Alter Rebbe says that if he were to recognize his situation, how far away he is from the level of a tzaddik, and Halavai should really be a Beinani, at least not a Russia for a second, then he would not be upset. Why? Because surely this is the Avodah of a Beinani. Look what he says. The Avodah of a Beinani, to subdue the evil impulse and the thought that rises from the heart to the mind, to completely avert his mind from it, repulsing it as if it were with both hands, as explained above in chapter 12. So we spoke about this many times, what it means by pushing it away with two hands. Means not to fight with the thought, and not to find reasons with myself and tell myself why I shouldn't be thinking, but to ignore it completely. When a thought comes to my mind that's disturbing, whether it's a thought that's not appropriate according to Torah, or it's a thought that's depressing, or a thought of anger, or a thought of hate, or a thought of resentment, what I do is immediately I have to dismiss it. And usually that's mainly by thinking about something else. Don't even think about, I have to dismiss it. Just switch to a different subject. And with the Beinani should know that b'chol d'chiyah, with every time that he pushes away a thought from his head, is kapi sitracha. By doing that, he's suppressing the sitracha, which is klipa. When you do things down here, it causes the same thing to happen on a higher plane and spiritual plane. And therefore, up there, you're also pushing away the sitracha that rises like an eagle. There's a pasuk where it says, if you will rise like an eagle, Hashem says, I'll bring you down from there. So basically, the klip is very arrogant. It rises like an eagle. And when I have the ability to push away a thought, down here, I'm pushing away a thought. Up there, I'm pushing away klipa. And like the Zohar writes about the tremendous pleasure, the Hashem has amazing pleasure from iskafia, which is pushing away the sitra achra. As it says, that when a person pushes away the klipa down here, Hashem's presence this is something which gives Hashem pleasure and brings godliness more than anything else. More than any other praise. The stalkus do yatem ekula, and what is the godly light that descends through this is greater than anything else. And let's finish the other side. And therefore, one should not feel depressed or very troubled about the fact that he has these thoughts. Even if this will be all your life, this kind of war. Have a thought, I push it away. Have a thought, and I push it away. I did this last week, and I did it a month ago, and I did it a year ago. So it's very depressing. It feels like I'm not accomplishing anything. So he says, perhaps that's why you were created. That's your avodah. The kfayil is and Hashem wants you to be the one to subdue klipa. So the klipa throws a thought into your head. You push it away, and by pushing it away, you are basically crushing klipa. I just want to add, it still feels like I'm doing nothing. If this happened yesterday, the day before, and the day before, and every time I push it away, I feel like I'm not doing anything. But the truth is, what I'm doing today is not the same thing I did yesterday. Now, what do I mean by that? It's like saying, imagine if someone is attacked by a terrorist, and you manage to get rid of the terrorist, you eliminate the terrorist, and tomorrow there's another terrorist. You eliminate the second terrorist, the third terrorist, the fourth. It's not that you're not accomplishing anything. Every day you're getting rid of another terrorist, which is making the whole force of the enemy weaker. When we push away a thought on Monday, that means I crushed klipa. What comes to me on Tuesday is not the same guy that came yesterday. This is another force of klipa that I crushed again. And every day I'm crushing something new in klipa, and that's my avodah. In other words, Hashem created two types of people. He created a neshamas that could be tzaddikim, that they should be so spiritual that the thought doesn't even occur to them, because internally they're pure as could be. And then he created people, they don't have the capacity to do that, because there's a pleasure that Hashem gets from the fact that we're fighting the thought, we're crushing the thought. And therefore, a Beinani is a person that could have the impulse, could have the thought, but as soon as that happens, he pushes it away. And therefore, what we're saying is that this is something which applies not only to a Beinani, to every single person. The only difference is the Beinoni actually succeeds in doing it. The average person, one day they can do it, the other day they might fail, but that's the avodah of the Beinoni. Regarding these words about the pleasure, it reminds me of a story. The Rebbe once told the story that the Friedrich Rebbe told, that the Baal Shem Tov was once sitting by the table, and his students were sitting around him, and the Baal Shem Tov was not in his usual simcha dika. The Baal Shem Tov was very much into simcha, and they saw the Baal Shem Tov was not. There was something that was weighing down heavy on him. And they're always worried when these things happen. That means the Baal Shem Tov sees something negative might be going on, and they were great tzaddikim. They were his closest students, so they did whatever they knew to do to bring the Baal Shem Tov into a better, happier frame of mind. But no matter what they did and what they attempted to do, failed. Nothing could change the Baal Shem Tov. As they're sitting, somebody walks in. His name was David, a simple Jew. When Baal Shem Tov sees him, his face lights up, turns into a smile, calls him over, gives him some of his wine, gives him a piece of challah, and the Baal Shem Tov became transformed. And the students were thinking, wow, how does this make sense? We're the Baal Shem Tov students, and we are who we are. And they knew what to do to make the Baal Shem Tov be in a better frame of mind. And nothing helped. And this simple Jew walked in, he didn't even say anything, he just walked in, and Baal Shem Tov became transformed. Baal Shem Tov knew their thoughts. So he asked this David to do something for him. He sent him on an errand. When he left the room, he spoke about him. And he told the students, you know who this person is? By the way, this story I'm going to tell you now, you probably have heard. And there are different versions of who it happened with, but here in this sikha, it's a sikha, so we know that this is authentic. So he said that this man had a very strong desire to have a beautiful esrog for Sukkot, but he could never fulfill that desire because he couldn't afford it. And he started to save penny by penny by penny. I don't know if it took him a year or a few years. We finally saved up enough to buy a beautiful esrog. To get the beautiful esrog, he had to go somewhere. Normally people would travel there with horse and wagon. He couldn't do that because he couldn't afford it. So he had to go by foot, and it was a very difficult trip. But he got excited that he's going to have a beautiful esrog, and he finally came there, and he bought the beautiful esrog. And he came home. He was like he was like jumping out of his skin with excitement. And I guess he shared his excitement with his wife. His wife looked at him and said, "Where'd you get that from? Where'd you get the money for that?" He said, "I saved up, and I got a beautiful esrog." And she said, "Beautiful esrog? Here the kids need bread, and they need eggs, and they need milk, and they need basics, and you're going buying yourself a beautiful esrog?" And she flew into a rage. And she grabbed the esrog, and she bit off the pit on the top part, which makes it possible. And of course, the natural reaction of any person in this situation would be to fly off the handle, not even a question. And he contained himself. In fact, he said to himself, "I guess I'm not worthy of having such a beautiful esrog. That must be what the story is." And he didn't say a word. He didn't even have enough money to participate in the communal esrog. There's a communal esrog. People who can't afford an esrog would give a coin, and they would have a part in the communal esrog. So he had to go and take something from the house and give it to a pawn shop, and they would give him some money, and that's how he was able to even be part of the communal esrog. Baal Shem Tov said that the pleasure that Hashem had from the fact that he contained himself, this is what it says in the Sikha, Hashem didn't have since Avraham Avinu and the Akedah. Next time you want to get angry, if you can try to think about it, it'll help. So this is who we are. We are people that we're not tzaddikim. We can have an impulse, but we control it. And that is an Aveda which gives Hashem tremendous pleasure. And that's part of what our Aveda is all about. And this is thought, speech, and action. What comes up without my control, I can't help it. That's my neshama internally is not totally pure. That's a beinoni, and therefore certain thoughts can come to my mind of anger, resentment, or everything else. But once it hits my conscious mind, then I realize the thought is not the proper thought. My avodah is to immediately stop and push it away with two hands. So that's our avodah is levushim, the garments, not to think. And then he says not only that, not to think, but the person could completely divert and dismiss it from his mind, that it's totally out of range from his thoughts. That's a beinoni. What's a tzaddik? Okay. But today, do the avodah of a beinoni. Tomorrow, I'll tell you what a tzaddik does. The Alter Rebbe wrote another sefer called the book for the tzaddikim. Tanya is Sefer Shal Beinanim. He wrote another book called Sefer Shal Tzaddikim. And there was another Rebbe by the name of the Shpola Zayden, and I think he said that this book is so lofty, there's nobody, or it's not really for someone in our generation. And I think he said, I'm not sure the deep exact wording, something along the lines that when he leaves this world, he's going to take it along with him. The day that he passed, there was a fire, and the Sefer got burnt and destroyed. And once it got destroyed, the Alter Rebbe said he's not rewriting it. Obviously, it's not meant for our generation. Because tzaddikim are very few, and the Sefer Shal Beinanim, that's the avodah that we need to do. Okay.
Thank you.
I feel like I just always lived there. It feels like we've been here most of our life. We haven't even been so. I went to yeah. I don't even know how it's been. Whoa. You want us to during the yes. I'm tired. Yeah. Just 9 a.m. Yeah.